Perfect. Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome back to those that were here on Tuesday for the Engineer Your Career episode focusing on how to build your interview confidence. If you didn't attend on Tuesday, just to let you know, we had a bit of a technical issue. So this is part 2 or take 2 of what didn't get covered on Tuesday's session. So just to introduce myself, my name is Jess Rush and I'm the sales lead here at Showcode. And today I'm welcoming back Amechi Udo, who I'll be handing over to very shortly to sort of take you through all of his hints and tips and how you can be best prepared for your interviews. Firstly, though, for those who maybe weren't here on Tuesday or haven't been here before, welcome to our community. Thank you so much for joining. If you've not heard of Showcode before, Showcode is a tech community platform where you can build, share, and compete, and even get hired. So we run lots of activities to support you in your career growth, such as hackathons, coding competitions, meetups, and workshops. So if you're interested in technology, please feel free to sign up to showcode.io, go create your profile there and join the various communities that we have, including Athena, which is for women and non-binaries, Varsity Code, which is for students, and then our newest community, which is Pro Code, which is for more experienced hires. I'll post a link in the chat very shortly, along with the connections for both myself and Mechi and myself. But I am not going to blabber anymore because I appreciate we are back and you were all here on, well, some of you were here on Tuesday. So I'm going to hand over to Amechi. If you can take the mic and I will leave you to do your part.
Well, thank you very much, Jess. Much appreciated. I'm just having some minor technical issues getting the slides up, but that is not a problem because what we will do is we will just kick off and I'll go live directly without necessarily having all the pictures on the screen. That's okay with everyone. All right, last time round, briefly we covered sort of prepping and preparing for your interview in terms of some practical steps that you can take in terms of researching the company, getting yourself in the right mode for being interviewed. Also some very practical pieces around if you're meeting in person, what you might need to do in terms of your hygiene factors. Make sure that you smell nice, but not too overpowering. We brought things to a close last time around, really looking at some of the core questions that people had to ask. One of the most important ones that people are asking was around salary. When the salary question comes up, they're asking about how to negotiate, what they needed to do. I will recap on this as it's really important for that everybody's comfortable with salaries. First and foremost, please make sure you grab a pen and paper. On that piece of paper, please write down your desired salary. The reason for writing it down now is so that when you are asked in the interview, you're not taken by surprise. If you're not sure what that number should be, it's okay. Just write the number down. No one else is looking. They're not going to tell you it's right or wrong. Just write it down. After this session, I encourage you to go on to sites like Glassdoor and Google Jobs or Indeed, and actually have a look at some of the salaries. And of course, use LinkedIn as well. Look at the salaries. See if the figure that you've written down is in line with market rates, is below market rates, or above them. It means that when you have the conversation about your salary, you can begin by saying, actually, when you're asked, well, what are your salary expectations? You can say, having researched the market and looked at your own company, I would say a range between X and Y would be fair for this position. And then don't say anything else. You have started the process of negotiation, and as such, you just allow them to take the information you've given them and go away and do what they need to do inside their organization. It's not for you to fix. They've asked for a figure, you've given one. Also bear in mind that negotiations can continue after the interview process. So when you're selected, when you're taken forward, you're made an offer, you can continue to negotiate up to and including changing your mind on the figure. You may have realized, oh, actually, I need a bit more, or I'd like something else included in the package or the program. You can change your mind. Okay, folks? But the key thing is write the number down now, do your market research, practice saying it so that you're comfortable when you come to the interview. If you're asked by a recruiter at the beginning of the process, it's usually, not always, but it's usually to help avoid them being embarrassed when they present you and you present, and then you share your figure, and the client then goes back to the recruiter and says, "Oh, why didn't you tell us this was the figure they were looking for?" Okay, so just be prepared for that and understand why that would happen. I say that as a former recruiter as well as a former HR professional, so I've seen it from both sides. One of the other areas that is really important for you is being able to answer the "tell me about yourself" question. The reason they're asking you this question is usually to get a sense of who you are. Do you have an ability to self-reflect? Can you identify what to keep and what to miss out? Crucially, you need to add on to the end of that question these 4 words: relative to the job. So, tell me about yourself relative to the job. The reason you add these 4 words onto the end is because they are interested in interviewing you for the job. So they want to know, what is it that you bring based on your life experience that's relevant and appropriate for the job. You will have done your homework. You will have read the job description, you will have gone through the person spec, and you will be able to tell them precisely how different aspects of your career relate to what they're looking for. So you're looking for a front-end developer. As you can see, I began my career here as a junior developer, where I picked up these core skills, which I can see are going to be really relevant in this role. I then moved into this role where I worked on a number of different projects, some of which gave me expertise in this, this, and this, which I can see again are relevant and important for this position. Most recently, I've been doing this, and these areas are vital aspects from what you've told me in this role. You've just told the person perhaps 1, 2, 3, 10 years worth of career history, but in a very succinct way, cherry picking the most important bits that relate to the position. Does that make sense to everybody? Does that work for everybody? If you want to type in the chat and just say yeah, a Y for yes, or an X for no, or an N for no, and an X if you're confused. I'll just wait a moment to see it because I know it takes a little while for it to come through on the chat. Okay. Seems it's all working well. Good stuff. We'll move on to greatest weaknesses questions. It often again sets people up for a lot of worry and anxiety. Is it that I can't undo a jar without using a tea towel, or is it that I can't run a marathon in under a day? Are these my issues, my concerns? No. Remember the 4 little words we just talked about, which are relative to the job. So you can put it at the front this time. Relative to the job, what's your greatest weakness? So again, you look at the job description, you scroll down and you see what you feel is the weakest area relative to the position. You put in your information, you talk it through. The interviewer is not particularly interested in what the weakness is in and of itself. What they are interested in is, hey, has this person got the nous, the sense, the skill to learn enough to manage this so that they won't be a problem for me in this job? So, for example, having looked at the job description, I'd say my experience in this particular program is an area of weakness. I do recognise, however, it's an important aspect of the role. When faced with a similar situation in my last role, I took on additional training and courses at my own time, and that helped accelerate my learning and bring me up to speed within a matter of weeks. And I would look to do something similar in this situation to help me be an effective contributor in this role. You can imagine the interviewer inside is already going, phew, because I thought I was going to be having to do all of this by myself. When we're talking about our weaknesses, we don't dwell on them. Instead, we show what we've done in the past proactively to manage such weaknesses, and crucially, how we can have a positive impact in the role that we are going for. The better we are at doing this, the more comfortable we can make the interviewer, the more likely they are to feel, yes, this is a candidate I want in my team. Flipping it across to what's your greatest strength? It's the same process. It's the same situation. Relative to the job, look down the list, pick the greatest strength, give them a clear example using the core model that I shared with you before. So we talk about a competency, we talk about the opportunity that we were dealing with, what was the obstacle in the way of that. We talk about the action that we took, the result that came of that, and the relevance to this position. The relevance piece is the most important part of all those steps. As I said before, if Pete, you don't put that relevance piece in, you're going to be like probably 90 to 95% of candidates. They'll tell you about a past result and leave it in the air for it to be assumed that the interview will make the leap as to how that result could be applied and be relevant in this role. Instead, in expressing it explicitly, you're making it very clear, oh, the result I got over here is valuable to you over here in this new organization because of the following, or can contribute in this area, whether that be you achieving a certain goal, whether your team, whether the organization. You're making it very clear why this particular example is relevant and matters to them. Okay? So we've tackled a couple of the most common questions that come up and cause a little bit of uncertainty. One of the other areas that people have shared as an issue is when questions that come up out of the blue, the ones that we can't or haven't prepped for. Often what organizations are looking to do in these situations is they want to check your ability to think on your feet. Can you handle an ambiguous or uncertain moment? Sometimes they do this on purpose. In fact, I was just listening to an interview yesterday of the CEO of the Man Group, which is an alternative investment management company, one of the largest in the world. And the CEO, I think his name is Luke Ellis, was saying how, yeah, we actually do have an intentional stumbling block question. We put it in because we want to set things up in a way to see how people adjust and cope. So I'm not saying every company will do this, particularly if they've already stated they're going to give you a behavioral or a competency-based interview. But at the same time, I am flagging that there will be situations where this is a possibility. Understanding the thinking behind such questions is helpful for you. Why? Because it allows you to take a moment, take a breath, compose yourself, and then progress through the rest of the interview with your response to the question. Sometimes the questions can be ones where you might think, oh my goodness, what do I say to that? There's no right or wrong answer. So, for example, you might be asked, tell me something about yourself that's not already on your CV. Remember your 4 little words, relative to the job. You then frame your answer accordingly. You may be asked something completely abstract. Maybe shown a picture and asked, how many how many jelly beans are in this jar? Again, like I say, it's totally abstract. It's designed specifically to help you manage uncertainty, to see how you respond. Any situations where you're faced with those sorts of questions, pause, take a breath, focus on, relative to the job, my response is this. And if you don't know, or if you're unsure how to approach it, don't be afraid to speak back and say, hey, thanks for asking the question. Could you give me a little bit more clarity about what exactly you're looking for or what you need, so that I can help give you the type of response you're looking for? Which actually takes me on to a very practical piece of advice. I don't know if any of you have interviewed at Amazon, but as part of their advice to their candidates, they do say, please, if you're not sure, if you don't know the answer to something, we'd much prefer that you just said you don't know than you try to waffle your way through to perhaps, possibly, maybe an answer. So be comfortable with being able to say you don't know. There may be instances in an interview where you just don't have an answer for someone, and that's okay. So be prepared for those kinds of situations as well. Okay. A quick check-in with everybody in terms of pace and content. How are we doing? If you just want to type in the chat, if it's okay, going too fast, going too slow, let me know. And again, I know it takes a couple of seconds for this to come through on the screen.
Yeah, it seems to always take about 30 seconds or so, but it feels so much longer, doesn't it, when you're the one speaking? I know as soon as you started talking last time, all of a sudden a flood of them came through. I was like, oh, there we go.
There we go. All good. Thank you very much. One of the most common interview questions that you get asked is, where do you see yourself in X years' time? The further out in time the question is phrased, the more abstract this becomes. The thinking behind this question is actually the company checking, are you going to be satisfied in the role that we've got for you? Are you a flight risk, i.e. you're going to be pushing to leave the company and do something else in a relatively short period of time? And are you a potential threat? Are you after my job? Your response is always going to be shaped around the following. Number one, you are going to confirm your interest in this position. That's your focus. Number two, you're going to express a willingness in collaboration with the organization to be developed or promoted and as is appropriate for the role and the business. So how does that actually sound? Where do I see myself in 5 years' time? Well, I think certainly in the first year, I'd be very much focused on this position, learning and beginning to start to make an effective contribution. As the role develops and the team requirements change or evolve, then in years 2 and 3, I'd certainly be looking to be a key part of this. Beyond that, I think it's a little bit hard to say, simply because it is an unpredictable world, as we've seen already through the pandemic. And I feel that my development at that point will be very much in line with or driven by what the business needs are. However, what I would like to stress is my primary focus initially would be in that first year, making a real impact and contribution to the team as I learn and grow, and then developing from there. So you've underlined for the interviewer, that your focus is primarily on the job right here that you're interviewing me for. That's what we're all interested in. And your time frame is really the next 12 months. Everything else after that, who knows? But right now, in the job, pass probation, be successful, make a contribution. Now, one of the other questions is, why have you applied for the role? What's attracted you to the company? If you've done your homework, you will know how to respond to this quite simply, because you will cherry pick 2 or 3 areas of the business and what it's doing and how those relate to your background, your experience and your expertise, and how you can make a contribution. I've applied to you because I've heard about your reputation as an organization. It's a very positive one, particularly your work in this area, in this role, and also here in this area, in this role, and this area as well. Each of these areas are places where I've got a particular interest or passion for, and I see it as a great opportunity to build and develop my skills whilst contributing to the growth and development of the business. You've made a very clear connection as to what you are interested in, how that fits with what you know, and what the outcome can be through you contributing in this role and how that will benefit the business. So you've got some of those are the more common questions that people get asked. Some of the other ones that you might be asked, what would your colleagues say about you, or what would a former boss say about you? Now, bear in mind that your colleague or your boss is not in the room. That is not to say that you start to make up some wonderful, fanciful story, but you do recognize that the reason the question is being asked is primarily to find out, will you say something bad about a former employer or your former colleagues? It is what I like to term a bear trap question. And as you know, with bear traps, they're best avoided. So you can say things that relate to the job. Oh, my colleagues would probably say, I have a good grasp of some of these key coding principles or technologies and their application. They'd also highlight my ability to learn quickly and adapt, as well as work across teams. If you're pressed and they say, yes, but what about your manager? What would they say? Well, to be honest, I think they'd probably say, this is a good opportunity to take the next step in developing my career. That's a very sensible, practical piece of information you can impart with them. It underlines your commitment to the role. Crucially, whatever you say, it needs to sound right in terms of tonality. Oh, I think my boss would say I'm really great for the role and it's a great opportunity. No, that's not the way it needs to come out. You need to speak with confidence, with clarity, so that the individual really gets a sense that this is what you want to do. Okay. So I'm just seeing a point in the chat. Somebody just confirming that things really make sense and just giving an insight into the interviewer's point of view. Just want to double check, Jess, are there any questions that have been popping into the Q&A as we've been going along?
Not yet, no. Q&A is okay now. But yeah, anyone that does have any questions, please pop them in there and we'll obviously come to them.
Okay, no problem. So, one of the other questions that you might get asked is, what did you like or didn't like about your last role? Yep, I can hear you already shouting, it's a bear trap question, Amechi. We wouldn't answer it negatively. The key bits here are what you're looking to do is express things that relate to the position again. There is no point sharing things you didn't like that aren't going to be applicable to this position. If you are going to share anything you don't like that relates to the previous role, Make it brief, and instead move it across to what you learned from that experience and how you can apply it in a positive way in this role. You're always looking to take the interviewer through the negative, back to the positive, back to the focus on this position. That way, when they're making their notes, all of them are focused on you and the role. Bear in mind, when you leave the room or when you turn off your camera, you won't be there anymore. All that will be there is the notes that the interviewer took, and that's it. So you need to make sure you're leaving a strong and powerful impression so that when they look back over those notes, they go, yes, you are the person we want. You are the person we need in our organization. You might also be asked questions like, tell me about a time you worked in a team. So again, you know that the competency they're looking at here is teamwork. You can look at an opportunity where you had a chance to work in a team. The business wanted to roll out a data migration program. I was selected to be part of the data migration team. The key actions I took were to liaise with the other functions to get a full understanding of the data that needed to be migrated, to work on a data cleansing process to make sure only the relevant and valuable information was carried across, and to set up a parallel running process once the system was launched to make sure that everything was working as it should do. The result was that we ran the migration was done successfully with no glitches, and it was all carried out during working time. The reason why this is relevant is I can see from what you've shared with me that there is going to be a data migration process going forward in the not too distant future. And I think my knowledge and skills in this area could really add value in making this an effective process. So you've made that connection between what you've done and how it relates to the position. You're again just emphasizing and helping the interviewer imagine you being there. I've literally, as an HR professional in the past, I have literally heard my fellow interview panel members saying things like, "Yeah, I can really imagine them here. I really like the way that they talk. I can hear them being the sort of person that we would want in the team. I really can see them doing well here. I've got a feeling that they'd be the right kind of person." And invariably, when I've looked back over what was it that led them to do that, it's because the interviewee continually gave the interviewer a sense of what it would be like to have them in the team and to show how they could contribute, make an impact, and add value. So those are quite a range of questions. A few other practical ones. So how do you deal with stress and failure? Again, these questions are being asked to help understand if you've got the ability to reflect and consider your situation. Also, they're seeking reassurance that if the role itself has a certain degree of stress about it, a certain degree of pressure, if there are going to be failures, they want to know how you're going to behave. They don't want someone who's going to throw a hissy fit and freak out. They want to know that there's somebody who can control their own responses to the situation, step back, think clearly, and take appropriate action. So yes, describe how you faced a situation where you face stress or failure, and walk them through the practical steps you took to overcome that. And as I said earlier on, show them how that is relevant for this position. So we've done a lot around questions that they might ask you, but what about you asking them questions? The most challenging thing sometimes is we spend so much time preparing for interviews where we've got all our questions sorted out. We forget, hey, they're going to ask. We've got the opportunity to ask them questions too. Just out of curiosity, if you could just type in the chat, how many of you want to work in a remote capacity? How many of you want to do remote only jobs? So if you just put R in the chat, that would be brilliant. For those of you who want to do hybrid, could you put an H in there? And for those of you who want to do in office, you can just put an I in the chat. Okay. So your question, one of your questions, whichever of those options you want, is how how's this role changed or developed now that it's been done in a hybrid capacity? If it's being done in hybrid, you want to know what is hybrid for this particular organization. Is that 1 day in the office, 4 days at home, 4 days in the office, 1 day at home, some variation? You need to know. So ask. If you are seeking remote, then again, you've got to ask, how's that working? How's that impacting the way that the team functions, the line management situation? How does it compare or contrast with before this role was remote? Ask. You've got to also think about other questions. So you can ask them about working practices in a more general sense. How have they changed since the pandemic? You can ask them, when was the job description last reviewed? Why would you ask that? Well, again, I've got to be honest, from my HR days, the atypical approach to a job description was, oh, so and so is leaving. Right, let's dig it out of their file or their folder, and we'll use that. Oh, we'll change the date. We'll put a couple of other minor tweaks in, and that's about it. The job has not necessarily gone through a deep dive and a thorough review or assessment. Therefore, you could find yourself being interviewed for roles and responsibilities that are no longer the priority for the business. So ask the business, when was the role last reviewed? As it will give me, and is there anything that's evolved since then that's a key part of the role? What you really want to know is what are the priorities. You can be more direct. You can say, hey, based on your job description, person spec, and advert, what would you say are the priorities for the role right now? What would you describe as success in this role in the next 90 days? What would be the most effective way for me to work with you to deliver on these? What's your preferred leadership or management style? All of these questions are designed to help you learn more about the organization than has been shared thus far. The key piece is there will be an expectation that you have questions. If you don't have any, I'm not saying this is always the case, but sometimes it can be seen as, were you fully prepared? So take your pen, write down your questions. It makes sense to ask about the role in terms of whether it's in office, hybrid, or remote. It makes sense to ask about the team and what sort of structure or process they do. Are they in all the time? Are they out all of the time? Because remember, you're going to be onboarded potentially virtually. Everything's going to be sent to you via email, or you log into a learning platform, as opposed to, hey, I'm here and I get to meet everyone. You may also want to ask about how often the team meets, or how often you and your manager meet, and how that might be structured. Again, you're building relationships with your colleagues. If you don't speak to them very often, it's going to take a long time to build up that know, like, and trust. If you know you're actually going to have a weekly huddle or even morning meetings, then it's very different. If you've got questions, by all means, please pop them in the chat. I, meanwhile, will pop them in the chat, or specifically put them in the Q&A function. In the meantime, I'm going to take you through a few other areas that you might want to ask questions around. Okay. Just touch on the characteristics again that the organization might be looking for in a person that they're looking to hire, and specifically how those characteristics relate to creating a productive working relationship. What you're looking for is to find out whether your person interviewing you, who's almost always going to be the line manager, not every case, but often is going to be that person. Check if they've got a real sense or understanding of who they want on board. The clearer they are about it, the easier it will be for you. If they don't have clarity, it simply means that part of what you'll do next is, when you're appointed, you'll take that as part of your early discussions and you'll build it into your development plan or your onboarding plan. So there are no surprises further down the track. Another question you can ask them is, what led you to choose to work for the company? And when you ask this question, please check what happens with their eyes. Do their eyes light up? Do they sound energized and excited? You want to work with somebody who is happy to be there, especially if they're going to be your primary point of contact. So do ask what's led them there. I've already talked about sort of the accomplishments that they will be looking for in the next 90 days. Additional to that is, do ask them how they're going to measure this. What is going to tangibly be different to indicate that the progress has been made? That again will help you put in milestones that have been agreed about your progress and development in the role. Another question you can ask is, how did the team overcome a recent challenge? You want to know not just about when it's all going well within the team, but also what happens when things aren't going so well. A little bit like earlier on, whether you're, as a candidate, you're asked questions about how you've handled failure or setbacks. You're also wanting to find out what's the culture within the team. Additionally, in terms of that team, you may ask when or if I can meet the team before starting. Again, you want to be able to ensure that you can gel with everybody else. Some companies do this. They will do, for example, they'll invite you to a team lunch, or they'll ask if you're available to come to a team meeting. They know it's difficult because you may well be working somewhere else, but their purpose is to give you a chance to meet everybody and make a more informed choice about joining the organization. Those kinds of businesses recognize it's a two-way process. You're picking them as much as they're picking you, and it's got to be right for both parties. There are some practical questions you might want to ask, such as, what's the next stage in the process? When would be a suitable time to follow up? Both of these are about you having clarity over this as an experience, and it allows you to deal with the little inner voices that sometimes pop up post-interview. It's been a couple of days. Oh no, maybe I haven't got the job. Oh, because I haven't called. It's been 2 days, and they said they would call in 2 days, and just deal with that in advance. If you feel comfortable with this, I would even encourage you to say something like, thanks for letting me know that you'll be in touch in 5 days. Of course, would it be okay if I haven't heard from you after 5 days to reach out? So you're telling them, hey, I trust that you will do what you say you do. If for any reason that doesn't happen, I'm letting you know what I will do in response. And is that okay with you? So that means for you and your self-talk or doubts that might spring up, friends going, oh, well, I don't know. Oh, should you? Ooh. You don't need to deal with any of that because you've already written it down in your job tracker. Oh, had interview, contacted due to be contacted in 5 days. Follow up on day 6 if not contacted. Done. It's an action. You don't need to spend lots of energy trying to work out should you, shouldn't you, should you, shouldn't you. Likewise, in terms of understanding the next stage in the process, you've got clarity about what should happen next. One other bit around that questions you can ask is you can also ask about feedback. I shared with you last time round, you should be looking at your feedback structure before you engage in the interview process. Specifically, what do you want feedback on that can help you develop and grow for future interviews? So, for example, you might want feedback on your clarity of answers, your pace or delivery in terms of how you spoke, your body language, anything that you did or didn't do that got in the way of your communication, your um, your overall energy or enthusiasm, your handshake, your smile. You might think, oh, but these are such small things. Why would an organization give me feedback on those? Surely they're only going to give me feedback on the content, the questions. Remember, though, it's how you make people feel in the interview as much as what you say in the interview that matters. Interviews are both great and flawed, primarily because of how we make the interviewer feel. You've got an interviewer who may have been going from meeting to meeting, who may have just jumped in on the call, who may have had a myriad of other things going on in their life. This may not be their priority and their focus. You, as a warm and engaging, easy to communicate with individual, are suddenly putting them at their ease. And in doing so, you're forming a better connection, a better rapport with them. And you want to know how to do that better. So that's why you ask about those areas of feedback. I think, Jess, on the slide side of things, I've come to the end of those. So I'm quite happy to take any questions whilst we've got the time.
Yeah, no, we've been getting some comments coming through. I think it's everyone's found it really helpful. Just having a look. I think going back, so Luzanne was asking if we're going to cover the questions that were asked the other day, which obviously I did save the screenshot for. But if you're happy to, I'll just bring them up here. So I think the first one from the other day was, how do you respond to a question about gaps in your work experience history? So if you're able to just cover that.
I'll deal with that one. Gaps in your work history are just that. They're gaps. You simply say in a brief line what you did. I took some time out from my career for care and responsibilities. They've now been taken care of. I'm back fully focused on my next step in my career, which is what's brought me here to meet with you today.
Awesome, love that. I used to always throw a lot of candidates when I used to work in recruitment, like what to say, and I'm like, it's fine, just own it. You had a gap, whatever you were doing, like just explain.
And I just want to stress also, given the pandemic, lots of folks had a gap, or having a gap, and that, like you just said, Jess, own it. It's not an issue. People are just curious generally. Oh, what happened? Oh, right, you did that. Fine, done.
Yeah.
You don't need to give them chapter and verse. Took some time out, care and responsibilities. Took a sabbatical, an impromptu sabbatical. Worked on the home. Did a bit of travel. Now fully focused back on this.
Yeah. And I think as well, what I've noticed definitely through like that point about the pandemic and just in general now, companies are so much more open to people who've had gaps in their CVs. I think that sort of like that fear came from years ago where like you were always constantly employed, you never left a company. Whereas now people are like, actually, if you're in your 20s, you're going out, you're seeing the world, you're doing this, you're doing that. And people are just so much more accepting of it. And within a business, because it's like, people have lives. Like, yes, we have our jobs, but we also have lives that we want to live. So, and that doesn't mean that we can always be working full time in order to have the life that we want to have. So, I think that's a really nice change that I've seen a lot over recent years.
Yeah. Please note a minor job board and a networking site called LinkedIn. actually, about 2 or 3 months ago, it upgraded its systems. It now actually has a line that says you can just click career break, sabbatical. So if that's allowing it,
Yeah,
please allow yourselves permission.
Yeah, definitely. Next
Next
question
one.
I had from Luzanne was, how do you respond to a question on why you want to transition from one industry to another without the necessary educational background?
First and foremost, remember you're in the room already or on the Zoom. So you've been invited already. So they've already said this is a confirmatory meeting. You've already passed our initial screening processes. You are already, in our view, a viable candidate for consideration. Throw your shoulders back, puff out your chest. This is oh right, okay. So they're just curious because perhaps the story isn't clear in the CV or the cover letter. Um, I'm particularly interested in the role because of these reasons. What you do, where you do it, or what's involved. These map across to areas that I've had a strong passion for, a commitment to, as reflected by my additional study, by my willingness to submit my details, knowing that on paper I don't necessarily look like the ideal candidate. You make it very clear what's your story, what has taken you from over there to over here, finished off with, and that's why these are relevant for this position. Like I said a moment before, when if you've got that oh no, they might ask me that moment, remember, hey, I've applied, I've gone through the screening, I'm here in the room. I wasn't even present for all of that. They've made a choice to pick me to be here. I am here to confirm their thinking is correct, which it is.
Yeah. Yeah. That positive
Sorry.
mindset. Yeah, no, the positive mindset is so important. It reminds me a bit of, I mean, slightly different, but I remember my early sales training and it was this whole smile and dial. And I used to think, oh, it's so cheesy, but it's so true because
Yeah.
people pick up on it. If your
You're
tone is,
smiling down the phone.
yeah.
Hello, can I help you?
Yeah.
Customer
Yeah.
disservice.
No, I think people are always grateful to get off the phone with me. They're like, oh, if they need to go, like put like an ear blockage in because I'm normally way too loud. Then we had a few questions. So, Onyeka, thank you for coming back as well. I know you submitted a few questions. So, your first one from Onyeka was, how do you respond to a question around salary expectations when the budget was not advertised? And then in addition to that, how do you respond as a follow-up if the figure/range quoted is below what is expected?
Fine. As I said last time round, it's the beginning of negotiations. It's not the issue doesn't have to be settled there and then. I brought up earlier on today, do your research, write your figure down, say your figure, be quiet. They'll usually tell you what they need to do afterwards. Oh,
Yeah.
I'll need to take that back. Oh, we'll need to explore, blah, 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 blah. The later in the process that question is being asked, the more leverage you have as a candidate. So if you're like at final interview, it's like you and two other people, and you seem to be the preferred choice. Yeah, they're going to go away and do their homework.
Yeah.
And come back to you with a proposition.
Yeah.
If it's outside their budget, that's not your business. What is your business is, what would you need to live and eat and be happy? Their budget is their budget. They go and deal with that. If they can't deal with it, fine. They'll come back to you and say, actually, as much as we want you, we can't stretch that far.
Yeah.
You might feel, oh my goodness, they're putting it back on me. Well, fine. You can say, how can we create a situation that will work for all of us then?
Yeah. It's always remembering it's a two-way street with an interview. Always remember. I think that's the one. It's a very simple advice, but I remember earlier on, like when you first start interviewing, you just constantly think that you just put them on a pedestal and think, yep, that's fine. Yep, I accept that. But no, it's just as much about you finding out if you're the right fit and that it can provide you the opportunity you need, as much as they need to work out if you're the right fit and they can give you the development and so on that you need in order to be successful for their business.
Yeah. And if you feel like you are being put on the spot, just say, thank you very much for the offer, or thank you very much for clarifying the range. What I'll need to do is take a little bit of time to consider that. Would 2 or 3 days be okay? What I need to do is go away and talk that over with my family or my significant other. Whether you need to go and do that or not, it's not the point. You're saying, I'm going to put a pause in this process to think and assess whether this really works for me. And I'll come back to you with a response. And the key bit is you honor the statement that you will come back with a response. But what you don't do is go, oh yeah, great, fantastic. And inside you go, sucker.
Yeah, no, it's always that was one thing I used to when I was younger. Like when you got a job offer, it's like, oh my gosh, you just accept there and then without actually thinking, no, let me just go and actually check if this is the right thing. So definitely always take that pause and make up that excuse, even if you don't have a significant other. I don't know, go talk to the wall like they do in Dragon's Den or whatever it may be.
Just got to go and talk to the HMRC to see what this actually means in pounds and pence. Because that's the reality, especially in the UK, where we all go, oh yeah, these gross salaries. Wow, look, I'm gonna. No,
Yeah,
you're getting that bit at the bottom there. All right, you're getting the smaller bit. Oh, and by the way, your travel's going up, your food's going up, your rent's going up, your heating's going up, and you're not going to get a chance to negotiate this again for another year. And even when you do, you'll be negotiating inside the business now as an employee and its framework and its assessment.
Yeah.
So please, you are worth it, like the adverts used to say. Go do your research, get your numbers right, and negotiate. And you can negotiate right up to and including the point at which you're about to put pen to paper.
Yeah.
So do not feel your answer has to be the one and only.
Yeah. And I think it's just making that, as you say, like the logistics side, like travel is very expensive. It keeps going up year on year. The inflation rates are crazy. So that was one thing. Another thing I never used to do when I was younger is take off my travel costs. Because if you're spending £300 on travel a month, whatever it may be, then that's money again. That's not going towards you. It's getting you to work, but is it really financially stable enough for you to be doing that kind of travel and that cost every single month?
And you can trade things as well.
Yeah.
So they go, oh yeah, well you'll get free gym membership. Well, actually, I don't really do the gym. it's not worth it to me. Can I either exchange it for another benefit that will be more aligned for me, or can I have it in cash? Oh, yeah. Well, nobody's ever asked that before. Yeah, until today. Off you go. You go and find out.
Yeah, definitely. They've obviously got the money there to offer you something. So if that doesn't work and that's going to get you across the line and get you to accept, then they'd be silly to not review it. But most companies are more than willing to negotiate. In terms of the next question, so I think we covered this a little bit on the last session, but I think there will be a way that you can maybe just recap it. So how do you manage the conversation if the style is not what you prepared for, so the structured and the not unstructured, or the topic takes you unaware?
If you're suddenly ambushed by an unstructured interview, take a breath, relax, have a conversation. And as the interview format allows, as the questions come up, just, oh, right, okay. They've asked me something that I can give them an example for. Whether they've asked for an example formally or not, I'm going to give them one. Because that way it's easier for me and them to imagine what it's going to be like when I work there.
That's good. How do you give intelligent answers when some of your previous experience is privileged information, civil servant, for example?
You be honest. So thank you for answering that question. I need to make you aware that some of the information I was handling with was sensitive, and therefore I'm not at liberty to divulge that information. What I can give you is a broad outline of the areas involved, or some aspects of it, and or the results from it. The key piece is you pull out the result and show why it's relevant to them. You don't necessarily need to go into, oh, this was the situation, the obstacles, and what was the result, and why is it relevant for us? That's the bit you can give, subject to, of course, the Official Secrets Act.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you. That is all of the questions from the other day. There hasn't been any more that have come through at the moment. I'll give people a moment to submit those.
They've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, I've got 3 minutes running down. If you do have any last minute questions, please do feel free to post them in the chat now. We'll try and get them wrapped up very quickly. Whilst I'm just waiting for that, just to let you know, if there isn't any other questions, that is, in terms of what we have going on next. Obviously, thank you, Amechi. It's been really, really awesome, and hopefully we'll be able to welcome you back again at some point. I know your advice has been hugely sort of loved and appreciated by the community, so I'm sure there will be other sessions that we can do with you. But in terms of what's coming up next, so we've got a few other things. So the next episode of Engineer Your Career is next week, so the 21st of March, 1:00, with my lovely contact Biber, who's going to be talking about fostering emerging leadership. So how can we get, obviously there's a huge issue with leadership not being very diverse, so we need to be looking at how that can change, and things that can be done to improve the leadership teams that we see around the globe at the moment, which are very white male dominated. Then on the 29th of March, we have actually got a meetup in London. So this is with MDRX Tech. So one of our ambassadors, Faith, she works at MDRX Tech. She wanted to do a meetup at their offices, so that's going to be really, really fun. Registrations are currently open. I'm going to share the link in the chat right now, so you can register for any of these that are coming up, and obviously that's where we put all of our events. It's on our Eventbrite page, and you can register for whatever ones you want to come along to. But just coming back, I wish you could be in all of my interviews. There you go, Amechi. You can start becoming a virtual interviewee.
I've just typed in the chat that I can actually now be with you all in your interviews if you watch the replay, because then you literally can just go to the bits that are most valuable for you and play those to help you just ahead of going in.
Yeah, there you go. So
there you go. It's the first time I've actually said I could do that now. So there you are.
Thank you so much. It has been a really, really great session, and thank you for obviously coming back after the technical difficulties we had earlier in the week. And yeah, we look forward to hopefully seeing you again, and we'll stay in touch. For anyone else, if you have any further questions, as I shared earlier in the chat, please connect with Amechi. He'll be more than happy to help you where possible. And best of luck with your interviews as well. I hope they go well, and they're successful, and you have a new job.
And please connect with each other to practice. Don't save it till the interviews. Practice, practice, practice. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jess.
See you later, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.